Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today I'm going to be doing something I have not done yet with my channel. Basically, I'm going to do a video AAR, and I'll pair it up with a written AAR on my website, most likely. So the way this will work is I'm just going to tell you what's going on. I'll do all the action off screen, but I'll show what the dice rolls were so you can see what numbers came up, and I'll talk about it a little bit. But the idea is here is to kind of make this fairly short and quick and just show mainly the results of the action. I've done 2 playthrough videos already, so if you do want to see the mechanics of how the game works, I would strongly suggest that you watch those 2 videos if you have not yet, because they show how the mechanics work. This is the Fatherland expansion of The Long Road from Flying Pig Games, designed by Mark Walker. And this is scenario number 1, which is a fairly simple one. It's on one map, map A. The name of this scenario is Bypass. And the description reads, some thought the Russians were stupid, but Oberfeldwebel Schmidt of the 17th Panzer Grenadiers believed that their bullets were just as clever as the ones he shot, and he guessed they wanted to stay alive as badly as he. Schmidt believed that made them dangerous and smart. The autobahn ran through the middle of Gersbach. That's why the 17th was there. Trucks dropped them off 3 days ago. 2 days ago, the Soviet tanks came and went. Seems the tanks knew better than to mess with the legs in the city. Battalion sent a mortar battery the other day. Schmidt's men volunteered, the martyrs that brought them, to help the cause. This morning, the recon platoon spotted Soviet infantry in the woods north of the town. He guessed he would see just how smart the Russians were before the day was done. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the German setup. So they get to set up first. So that's what you're looking at. They have 5 infantry, a Milan, 1 mortar, 1 martyr, and the hero Schmidt, whose ability is rally. This is a little bugle here, symbol on his counter, that allows him to rally 1 leg unit in each rally phase as long as they are within 2 hexes of him. And all the infantry, all 5 infantry units are within 2 hexes of Oberfeldwebel Schmidt, so he will be able to use that ability when the Soviets begin their attack. Now the Soviet forces, they get to set up anywhere on map A, but no closer than 3 hexes to any hex of Gersbach. So here we see the entire map now, with the entire map set up. So the Soviets have the following forces, and they set up second anywhere on map A, but as I said, no closer than 3 hexes to Gersbach. They have 1 T-62, which is here. They have 2 BRDMs. One is here. The other is here. They have 3 BTR-70s, here, here, and here. 7 infantry. Some of them are with the BTR-70s. Some of them are on foot. They also get 2 engineers. One of them is here. The other is up here somewhere. Where is the other engineer? Oh, it's with Vorishnov right there. And speaking of Vorishnov, he is their hero. He is here. He's a sniper. He has the concealed ability, which means if he's in cover, he cannot be targeted. And he also has the sniper ability, where he can basically automatically disrupt anybody within his line of sight as long as he meets a fairly easy dice roll requirement. And they also have the commander, Dramanovich, who's with his T-62. And he's got the lucky ability, which is a really nice one to have. He rolls 2 dice for every attack on the fire table or the close assault table, and he gets to choose which one he wishes to use. So we are going to get underway. This is the start of turn number 1. This is a 5-turn scenario. The victory conditions is that the Soviets win if there are no German units in Gersbach at scenario's end. They rubble no more than 3 Gersbach hexes, and they do not eliminate any civilians. That typically means they're probably not going to drop artillery fire on the Germans because of those reasons. So now that we have everything set up, oh, they also have 1 reinforcement. It is a reduced Spetsnaz platoon, and that will be able to appear at any time in any hex once its requirements are met for the reinforcements. So they can be placed in any hex adjacent to Gersbach when a Soviet unit either enters the hex or assaults from the hex. May not place in a hex being entered by or occupied by a Soviet engineer. Any enemy units in the hex are attacked. They get 2 mines. Both mines need not be placed at the same time or in the same hex. The Germans also have 2 wire. They put one here, one here. The river, as far as special scenario rules, there's one that deals with the river. The river stream hex sides represent a deep river that may only be crossed at the bridge, which is here, or by a BTR-70 and its passengers, but they must pay 6 movement points for the hex side. The BTR-70 has a movement rating of 8, so it can basically, if it's adjacent to the river, it can hop across as long as we don't have bad terrain on the other side. That would be higher than a 2 for a wheeled or tracked vehicle. Only full hexes are playable. The German player may place his focus marker on the 2 dice side during setup. There it is right there. It's with our mortar. And the German player may not call artillery or an airstrike on any Gersbach city hex. The Germans do not want to risk destroying their country to save it. This is a 5-turn scenario. Both players begin with 2 cards. Both players receive 2 cards per turn from the start of turn number 2. So, speaking of cards, I'll show you what the Germans have. They have double time and op fire. Double time allows them to increase the movement of all units in 1 hex. Double leg movement factor, add half of the movement factor, fractions rounded down to an AFV. If targeted by op fire, shift 2 columns to the right. Okay, and then op fire means an undisrupted unit may conduct opportunity fire even if it's already fired or moved, basically. And we also have, for the Soviets, we have a pre-planned bombardment, which allows you to subtract 2 from an artillery or mortar accuracy roll, and they have an 8 firepower artillery barrage. As I mentioned, they will not likely drop artillery on the city because they don't want to risk rubbling hexes or killing civilians, both of which can easily happen in an artillery barrage. So we will get underway here. So as you can see, the Soviets used their artillery bombardment to drop smoke in these 3 hexes. They were accurate and did not actually need to use their pre-planned bombardment. But basically what they've done is blinded the mortar so that it cannot fire through this hex, although it can actually, because it does have advanced optics. But it does provide some screening effect for the other units in the area. The mortar fired back. It was firing through a smoke hex, so it took a 2-column shift to the left, but it does have advanced optics, which means it's not blocking terrain. It attacked Dramanovic's T-62 here and scored 2 hits, which allowed it to both disrupt and reduce that T-62. And Dramanovic's rolls only affect attacking, so he was not able to impact that at all. So here's our situation at the end of the first turn. So the Soviet forces here all kind of closed in. We have these 3 that were able to get within assault range of our mortar here under the fired marker. This unit here, because there is a wire marker underneath here, had to pass a morale check to avoid disruption and moving into a wire hex, which they did pass, so that they were successful in getting there. So they will be assaulting here, and we have not assaulted. I shouldn't have said end of turn 1. This is after the movement phase. Okay, so we have these 2 infantry units here. This guy and this guy take op fire. This one actually hit this infantry 3 times. I haven't removed him yet, but he's dead. So he's going away. This infantry here attacked this engineer unit right here and inflicted 1 hit, which disrupted him. So that is our situation, and now we have a close assault to conduct on our mortar here. Here's our mortar, and we have these 3, so that's going to be 12 on 4, 3 to 1, but he's in a city, which is a 3-column shift to the left. Actually, no, he's a fighting vehicle, so that's only a 1-column shift to the left, I believe. Yes, a 1-column shift to the left, but they're coming out of the smoke as well, which gives them a shift to the right, actually. of 2 columns. So they're going to end up actually in the 4-to-1 column here. So we ended up rolling 3 hits on the Soviets and 5 on the defender. So this martyr is going to be eliminated. So he has been removed from the game. The focus marker, because it's going to be in a captured hex, is going to be moved off board as well. Each of these 3 are going to take a hit and be disrupted, but they will be able to advance. So I'm going to take my BTR-70 here, and I'm going to move them up into Gersbach with their infantry. This hex has now been captured, so that was a successful turn for the Soviets. This is the situation at the end of the first turn. I can remove these fired markers so you can see what everybody's got. We've got a couple disrupted units here. This is an engineer, this is a tank. We had an eliminated martyr, we had an eliminated Soviet infantry platoon, and we are ready for turn number 2. Okay, card draw for turn 2. The Germans got initiative. They drew lost, which allows them to make a target unit in a city hex that must stop movement. That'll be handy since we're in a city and we're going to be fighting for the city. And stragglers, which will allow them to return a reduced but eligible combatant infantry or recon unit to full strength. Since we have 5 infantry platoons, that one is likely to come in handy as well. Soviets drew a move out, which allows you to, instead of firing, move 2 units. That could be handy as well. And a pre-planned attack, automatically gain initiative for the current turn, play after initiative is roll 4. So we will do that probably the next time they don't get initiative. So for now, the Germans have initiative. This is turn 2. We're going to roll for disruption to see if the Soviets can undisrupt these 4 units. So the Soviets were able to undisrupt these 2 units. These 2 did not. So we will start turn number 2. Let me remove these. I took them off them, but didn't move them off the board. And we are ready for turn number 2. It is the Germans' initiative in this turn, so they will be firing first. In our first fire attack, this infantry here fired and disrupted one of the 2 BTR-70s. Both of the BTRs currently still have their infantry mounted. They are not dismounted as of yet. So one of these 2 is disrupted, which is going to make their upcoming assault a little bit more difficult because we have these units that are also disrupted and won't be able to close in and participate. Soviets retaliate by having Voronov disrupt this unit right here. With his special ability, he rolled a 1. He needed a 0 to 6 to do it. He gets a fired marker. Okay, so we used our mortar unit here, spotted by this guy right here. We attacked this hex here. We ended up with really good odds, and we actually inflicted 5 hits on this infantry unit, which eliminates it. Soviets elect to forego any further firing. The Germans also will not fire any further in this turn, so we're going to move to the movement phase. And the Germans have initiative. They will pass. They don't need to move anybody. They don't want to move anybody currently. So we are going to move directly into the Soviet movement phase. Okay, so we had some movement here. We had our infantry that was up here move into this hex adjacent to the city. Our recon BRDM also did. So they're both here ready for an assault. Our engineer moved up onto the hill. He could not move, obviously, because he fired. We have wire here. We had an infantry move into that hex. It successfully passed the morale check needed to do that. So he's here. Our BTR-70 attempted the same and could not do it, so he gets disrupted. So we are set now for our close assault phase. So we had an assault here. We took these 2 Soviet units which totaled 12 against this infantry in the city, which has an 8. So that would have been 1-to-1 because of the rounding rules. But because they're in a city, they get a 2-column shift to the left, making it a 1-to-3 attack. But the rolls worked out pretty well for the Soviets. They ended up disrupting both their units, but also disrupting the German infantry. So basically a wash, but they were hoping to do a little better than they actually did. Just couldn't quite pull off the roll needed to actually really do it. So the big assault is going to be on this hex right here. This infantry unit will be being assaulted by our BTR and our BRDM. Again, this is going to actually end up being a not great odds one, except they are going to use their Spetsnaz as well, because we're allowed to drop this in during an assault. And so we're going to be doing that. So that's going to make this a 2-to-1 going into it, but it's going to actually end up being a 1-to-2 because of the shift to the left. Okay, so the assault ended up, again, the Russians rolled pretty well, but because of the rolls that the Germans had, they took 2 hits, so they were reduced and disrupted. They also took more hits than the Soviets did, so they're going to have to retreat. So they're going to actually retreat into the same hex with Schmidt. The Soviets all are disrupted. The Spetsnaz, though, appears in this hex, so he's just disrupted in that hex. So they are now basically holding the south end of the bridge, but they still need to clear all the hexes of Gersbach. So this guy is probably in trouble because he is now isolated. Okay, so we're ready here in turn 3. Actually, I need to remove these smoke markers. Forgot to do that. Sorry. These are gone. So the smoke markers are gone now. All right, so Schmidt used his ability to undisrupt this guy. Then they played the card on him for stragglers to actually return him to full strength. These two failed their rally rolls, so did these 3. These 3 succeeded, and the tank failed again. So this is our situation, start of turn 3. The Soviets drew initiative, so they will be going first. The Germans drew 2 cards. They got Op Fire and Lucky Day. So again, Op Fire will allow you to fire an undisrupted unit after it has fired in the fire phase, essentially. Lucky Day lets you re-roll up to 4 defensive dice. The Soviets drew Chemical Weapons Scare, which means you can place a moved marker on a target hex. It's not real useful for this particular scenario for them. But the Voluminous Fire is very nice. It allows you to shift the fire results table column 2 to the right. So that's a nice one to have for them. And so we will now begin with the fire phase for the Soviets. So the Soviets elect to play the Move Out card, which allows them to move 2 units instead of firing. We elected to move our Engineer and Voronov. I'm going to drop fired markers on them because essentially that acts as a fire action, even though it's not a fired action. So now it's the Germans' turn for a fire. They will fire this infantry at our infantry right here. And they successfully disrupt that unit. They get a fired marker themselves. Now it's back to the Soviets. So the Soviets, they're kind of in an interesting position here because the units they would want to fire with, they're also wanting to assault with. So they're probably not going to do anything with that. And they're going to pass, actually. So we will move on to back to the Germans, rather. And we're going to drop some mortar fire here with this guy being the spotting unit on this hex right here. Mortar attack. So the mortar failed its accuracy check and therefore fired on an empty hex and did no damage. So we will now move on to the movement phase. Okay, so as you can see, I placed movement markers here to replace the fired markers because I believe that's the correct thing to do. So with that being said, I am going to actually use this card for the Soviets before I do the close assault for the chemical weapon scare to actually prevent the Germans from moving the Milan, because I was thinking about moving the Milan, and so the Soviets can prevent that from happening, because obviously from here it doesn't have a shot, so it would be likely a good candidate to relocate somewhere up here where it would have a shot, especially as we have a BTR 70 up here as well. So here's our situation as we get ready for the close assault phase. We are going to have the these two stacks, basically these 2 units are going to assault this position right here. Okay, so our assault here ended up having a very bad role for the Soviets, and they took a disruption and step loss for both their engineer and Voronov. Meanwhile, the Germans did not take a single hit, but they were already disrupted, so they will remain disrupted. And these guys are also disrupted. I think I'm going to not do anything down here right now. Looking at the odds, we have 8 and 8. That's a 1-to-1, but we'd have a 2-column shift. The infantry being in a city, which would make it a 1-to-3. And to do anything in a 1-to-3, you basically need to roll really, really low. Like basically a 0 gives you a 4 and 4. Everything else favors the defender. So we're going to skip that and just move on to our next turn. Okay, so as we start turn number 4 here, we have both sides actually rolled really well for removing disruption. With the Germans, Schmidt used his ability to undisrupt this guy. This one rolled and was successful. Then we had this one fail. Both units here failed. Success for Voronov, but not for the infantry underneath. The BTR was successful. This BTR was successful. The other one was not. And the tank was also successful. So the Soviets rather, only have 2 turns to really make some hay here. And we drew cards, of course. The West Germans drew ECM and manpad, so they now have the ability to both disrupt the focus for the Soviets and also attack a helicopter or an airstrike. They can counter it with a 6 firepower attack. The Soviets drew Spetsnaz, which will allow them to disrupt a unit, very useful, and a Tachka strike, which is basically a powerful artillery attack that they will be using this turn because they need to break the Germans here. So in case you're wondering where the aid and focus markers are, the Soviet focus marker is here. The aid marker is under the Spetsnaz. The German focus marker is under Schmidt in this hex, and the aid marker is under a mortar. So we are now ready for, we'll play the ECM card for the Bundeswehr, which will disrupt the marker here underneath our BTR. And because you can play that at any time, so they'll just play it now. They actually have initiative, so that we're in the fire phase at this point. And they do have op fire, so that might come in handy in certain areas if they use it. We do have, I think our first attack will be this infantry here, doing the attacking here, and then we'll see what happens with that. And then obviously we alternate during the fire phase, so the Soviets will get a shot, and then back and forth, etc. Okay, so the Germans here, our infantry fired on the Spetsnaz. With the column shift, it got shifted from 6 to 0, and they actually rolled an 8, which resulted in no effect. So they get marked with a fire marker. It's now the Soviets fire. Soviets turn to fire. They're going to play their Tachka strike. Choose hex, need not be in line of sight. Hex plus adjacent must contain 4 units minimum. You roll a d10, 0 to 2 hits, 3 to 5 drifts, 1 hex, 6 to 8 drifts, 2 hexes, 9 are duds. Attacks impact hex with 12 HE, surrounding 6 with 10 HE. So this is a big strike here. So what we're going to do is, because we need to have adjacent have total of 4, we'll take this one, which has 2, plus this one, and this one is 4. So this is our target hex. So I realized I needed to make a correction to my targeting. The target was this hex, because we're going to hit the 6 surrounding it as well as that one. So this was a very devastating attack by the Soviets with their Tachka strike. They eliminated the infantry here, the Milan here. They disrupted and reduced the mortar. They disrupted and reduced this infantry. They disrupted and reduced this infantry. And they disrupted both the infantry and Schmidt in that hex. This hex was empty. So as you can imagine, that did a ton of damage to the German units. all their units that are remaining now are disrupted except this guy. And so that's going to prevent them from actually doing anything further in the fire phase. So they'll have to pass. It goes back to the Soviets, and then they're going to pass as well because we are looking to do to get into position to do some assault. Rather, I have to eliminate all of that. But basically, what happened here is we were on the 6-to-1 odds chart. We rolled the. They took 4 hits to the German unit. I played the lucky day card for them, which allowed to re-roll those 4 hits, but they still rolled 3 hits, so that unit was eliminated. I moved my T-62 and Dramanovich up here. The Soviets took 1 hit. I applied that to our recon, BRDM, in this hex here. And so this is the result. We now have captured, this part of the city here is all Soviet. And we're going to next attempt to break this guy right here. So we ended up on the 3-to-1 scale. I used these 2 stacks. I did not use Voronezh. So we're going to say that what happened here is we ended up with 3 hits on the attackers, 5 on the defenders. Of the 5 hits, 2 hit, which this already disrupted reduced unit means it's going to be killed. So it is now dead. The Russians, actually, the Soviets rather, took 3 hits. They basically rolled a 0, 1, and a 3, so none of those hit. So they have taken rather that that hex. Will advance in, and now we will actually assault this hex with Voronezh. Bad roll for the Soviets there. Voronezh gets eliminated. And they did not do any damage to the Germans. So that will complete turn number 4. I'll do my cleanup, which really doesn't involve much. We will pick up with turn number 5, final turn. We're going to do the rally phase, and I'll come back right after rallying, attempting to rally all these units that are disrupted. We'll obviously roll for initiative, etc., and I'll come back and recap what happened. Okay, so Soviets got the initiative. Most of the units actually passed their disruption check. We only ended up with, I think, 2 that did not. 1 here and 1 here. So that is good for both sides, I guess. Schmidt actually recovered as well, so that helps the Germans, of course. Now, what we've got here for cards, these are good cards for the Soviets for sure. They drew for the motherland, which improves their morale by 1, so they'll definitely play that one. And then they also drew an artillery barrage, and we're going to use it. We're going to use it this time because we need to crack this German defense if we're going to actually succeed in our mission here. Now, we also have the Germans drew an artillery barrage of their own, so they're going to use that as well. They do have some areas they can attack which are currently not inside the city because they can't fire on their own city. They also got an op fire again. So they got tons of op fires. They have 3 of those now. But they're still in a shaky situation here. They did need to use their aid marker to rally the mortar, actually. So we're going to begin with the fire phase, and the Soviets have initiative, so they're going to actually use their artillery barrage. And they will target the mortar, with these 2 being our secondary targets. Okay, so not a great outcome there for the Soviets. They used their assault, artillery rather. Targeting here, they missed. I use a D6 to determine the drift, so this would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was a 6, so this became the primary blast area, and then these were the secondary. So they actually ended up dropping artillery on their own unit, which ended up disrupting an infantry unit. They didn't do any damage to the mortar, which was the primary target. Or obviously these 2 were the secondary targets. And we have a blast. We have blast markers now in these 3 hexes. So that was their turn. Now the Germans are going to respond in kind with an artillery barrage of their own. They are going to actually target this empty hex with these 2 adjacent hexes being the target. So the German artillery did a fine job. They were accurate. They hit these 3 hexes. So this hex, they inflicted 4 hits and killed the unit that was here, which was an engineer unit, I believe. Then they also hit this one and inflicted 3 hits, which disrupted and reduced the infantry and also reduced the BRDM. The Soviets are actually going to elect to forego any further fire attacks, so the Germans will now attack, and I'm going to actually fire as the Germans because there's no reason not to. They have op fire cards they can employ to basically get an extra firing from their units here. We have our mortar here. I will use that first. We have a spotting unit here. We can drop mortars on this this guy here. We can't do it here because it's in the city, but we can hit this guy. We could also hit this guy, but we don't really have a line of sight to them. So we're just going to hit this unit here, which is a infantry, I believe. Yep, infantry unit with our mortar right here. So they rolled an 8, which made it inaccurate, and then I rolled a 1, which actually puts the blast just north of the disrupted unit here. So that was no effect. We will drop a fired marker on here. Now I will take my infantry in this hex and fire on this unit. Okay, so it's 4 firepower. They're in the open terrain. It's going to be in the 4 column. That attack was successful. It destroyed the unit. We need to drop a fired marker on here on this one. Now we have our infantry here with Schmidt. We are going to use them as well. We are going to attack the dismounted infantry that is here. Actually, maybe we'll go for the Spetsnaz, actually. We're going to shoot at the Spetsnaz here. They're going to get a 3-column shift, 6 firepower. They are adjacent, so we'll get a 1-column shift to the right and then a 3-column shift to the left. So that 6 will end up becoming a 2. That ended up working out really well. They inflicted 2 hits, which was enough to disrupt, and because that Spetsnaz unit was already reduced, that eliminated it. So good turn for the Germans here in turn 5. That's the last firing that they're going to do. We go to the Soviet movement now. And so this is going to end up being a little bit intricate, I think, because of the way I need to do this for assault purposes. Okay, so as we prepare for this assault here, we have a unit here that's going to assault this unit. The Soviets can't win this scenario because they don't have any way. Oh, actually, maybe they do. We'll assault. This guy's going to assault here. This guy will assault here. These 2 stacks will assault here. Now this, this unit here, I used op fire to actually fire on our BTR here, and it actually disrupted it. So we're going to end up only being able to assault out of this hex. So this hex will assault this one. This will assault this one. I'm assuming because it's a BTR-70, they can assault across the river. And this one will assault here. So that's where we stand, and we're going to roll out the assaults here and see what happens. So kind of a mixed bag there for the Soviets. They were successful here, knocking out the mortar and advancing to take this hex. They were not successful in these 2, however. They did succeed in reducing and disrupting our unit here, but they lost their BTR-70 and their infantry ended up surviving, but disrupted and reduced. This one, they ended up inflicting a couple hits, which reduced and disrupted. Well, they inflicted 3 hits, actually, so they disrupted both Schmidt and the infantry unit and reduced the infantry unit, but they also took hits to themselves and ended up disrupting their units as well. So basically the Soviets failed to win this scenario because they did not capture all the hexes of Gersbach. I mean, if you're generous and give them this hex, then they captured all but 2. So it's either these 3 are still in German hands or only these 2 are in German hands, but either way, they did not capture the entire city. They did not rubble anybody, and they did not eliminate any civilians, so that on that score, they did okay. But otherwise, that's it. The scenario's over. It's a West German win, a Bundeswehr win, and that's going to wrap it up for me here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I really like this game, and I will probably continue to play it and possibly even continue to do videos of this kind, which are a little bit easier to do if I don't have to worry about showing dice rolls and talking overly much about what I'm doing and showing fire table results, column shifts, etc. So that will wrap it up for me here today. My name is Joe. This is Hexed Encountered. As always, I'd appreciate it if you would like, share, and or subscribe. That really is helpful to me, and I appreciate it. If you do want to see more of Fatherland and or the long road itself, just please post in the comments, let me know, and I'll be happy to do more videos because, as I said, I really enjoy this game. So until next time, happy gaming.